Hi everybody, my name is Aaron Akanian and I want to welcome you guys to our virtual wine tasting here to benefit the AMSA PTO. I have to say, it's been a long time since we've done one of these, maybe about a year, probably since the last one we did with the fine folks at the AMSA PTO, and I was a little bit hesitant to do it again. You know, we're thankfully a little bit removed from our pandemic experience, and people can go about their day and go places they want to go. And I thought, who still wants to sit in their living room and watch me eat and drink? But I'm pleased to say that the response was great again, and I'm so happy to be back with you guys and hosting another one of these tastings. And I'm really excited to see a lot of new names on the list, a lot of new people joining this, and it's going to be a fun, wacky experience for all you new guys, and for the people who have been here before and seen me before. You know what to expect, but for those who don't, you know, a little background on who I am, what this is, and what we are. So my name's Aaron Akanian. I'm the general manager of the Vin Bin. We are a locally owned, family-run, small chain of wine, cheese, beer, spirit shops here in Central Mass. We have the home base here in Marlboro. We've got Hopkinton and Southborough. And in Hopkinton and Southborough, we have our award-winning cafe as well. I'm sorry, not Marlboro and Southborough, not Hopkinton. Hopkinton is just beer, wine, and spirits and cheese, and a lot of good stuff too. We started doing virtual tastings back in, I think, April of 2020 at the request of a customer. A customer said she was looking, during the pandemic, was thinking of something to do for date night and thought, what about a virtual tasting? So we said, okay, let's see if we can throw something together and maybe like 10 people will take part in it. Well, the first one we did, we had bundles much like you bought tonight. You bought for this one, and we sold over 100, which was out of control. And then the second one we did, we broke our website because people bought them too quickly, and we sold over 120 packages, and it was just out of control, and went from there. We've came up with the idea, after having a little bit of a couple technical problems at the beginning, we came up with the idea to pre-record these, and with the idea that you guys could watch them at your leisure and not have to join in on a live video on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, what have you, or Zoom, and kind of make it more of a casual thing, which is what the Vin Bin's all about. We like to be casual about this stuff. We aren't trying to be stodgy or uptight. This is a casual experience. And that's kind of what brought us here. And we've done several as fundraising events for the last couple of years, and we've been really fortunate to have great partners like the AMSA PTO and the Marlboro Public School Music Program and a few others. And we're proud to be able to be helping our community and getting some great wine in people's hands. So what are we going to do tonight? We're going to try 3 different wines and 2 different cheeses with some crackers. I'm going to spend a few minutes on, a few brief moments on each wine, kind of talk about what the flavor profiles are, a little bit about each wine, what I think there is good about them, where I think you could use them for. I'll talk about the cheeses in between. A couple of my favorite cheeses are actually in part of this bundle today. And it's going to be very easy and sort of light. So what I recommend you do is, if you would like to, you can open all 3 wines and try them tonight, try them at once, or you can start with one and come back to the other one if you want to a little later, or the next day, or however you want to do it. I think it works anyway. I'm not going to force you to drink 3 bottles of wine in one night, although I think, why not? Have fun. But, you can do this in your own time. So in your bag, you have a few things, and we'll go over what those things are. So you have the 3 wines. You have the Cafferlan Prosecco Sparkler. A lot of focus. We have a name. I don't say the name of this wine. We call this the PJ. This is the PJ Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. And you have, for your white, you have your Obsession white blend, or excuse me, white. And then you have 2 cheeses. The sort of longer piece you have This is the Piave. This is a beautiful Italian cheese. And then the other little square piece you have is the Prairie Breeze, which is a cheddar out of Iowa, one of the best. And you have a box of crackers from Rustic Bakery, one of our favorite producers. This is their everything spiced crackers. Now, what do you need to get started? All you need is the wine. You should hopefully have the whites chilled, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to start off with, as you folks, when you're going throughout the world and you're at let's say you're having a wine tasting or you're putting on a dinner or something, always start with bubbles. Bubbles are where we always begin. So we're going to start with our Cafferlan Prosecco. Now, what I don't have here, what I don't use, is one of these, okay? You have this at home, I'm sure. It's a pretty little champagne flute, and they look nice. They're terrible for tasting wine, okay? They're really pretty to clink at a wedding and yada yada, but if you really want to try wine, you don't use that. I was going to throw it, but I don't want to clean up the glass. I use just a regular wine glass when I drink sparkling wine. I don't like flutes, and I don't like the coupes, the flat ones, because with these flutes, I can barely fit my big schnoz in there to try to get any aroma, and I can't get the wine to really swirl. I'm not able to taste it right, and the coupes open up the wine too much to the air, so the bubbles dissipate too fast. This is the perfect size glass for really any kind of wine. You don't need to have 10 million glasses at your house. You don't need, you really don't need separate glasses for red and white. I mean, it can be kind of fun to have specific glasses. I myself at home, I pretty much drink out of something like this most of the time. I do have one special glass that's a big wide bowl that I'll sometimes use for my more high-end wines or something really special, but I only use that. I mean, only use it once in a while because I'm afraid to wash it because it's very delicate and I know I'm going to break it. All right, so Cafferlan Prosecco. Why do we like Prosecco? Americans love Prosecco. Americans love Prosecco almost more than the Italians like it, which is, of course, where it's from. Prosecco is made with a grape called Glera, and it's a really beautiful sparkling wine that is a great alternative to champagne for a couple reasons. One, the price point is unbeatable. I mean, you can find Prosecco for mostly under $20 throughout the world. I wouldn't recommend paying more than $15. I really wouldn't recommend paying more than probably $15 or $16 for Prosecco. I think that's just the sweet spot. It's really where it's supposed to be. I have sampled some higher end ones in my life. They're very nice, but I think once you start to think about paying $40 to $50 for a bottle of sparkling wine, you might as well just buy champagne. But if you're looking for something that's affordable, that's got a nice bubble to it, that simulates sort of popping the cork of a champagne, but is a little better than some of your like $6 or $7 sparkling wines you get at the store, the Cafferlan Prosecco is a fantastic option. It's been a bestseller for us for quite a while now. So when we sample wine, wine is an immersive experience. It's all about how the wine looks, how it smells. You're evaluating the way it sort of rolls around in the glass. It's a really kind of, use all your senses with wine. When I try a wine, the first thing I do is before I even really do anything with it, I like to put my nose right in there and see what I can get. So this one right off the bat has a lot of perfumey notes to it, very floral, a lot of almost like those really nice bright white flowers. It's very pretty. And then I give the wine a really aggressive swirl. Okay? Really want to try to get some air into this wine so we can try to get some more nose out of it. And then I smell it again. So on that nose, I get a little more honey, a little more of like a peachy stone fruit note, and then a lot of green apple too. You can really sense that apple. And then I take a sip. Now, I'm spitting. I'm probably going to forget a few times throughout the night to do that. Sorry, it's off hours, But you guys at home, you shouldn't spit the wine out, you should drink it. This is a lovely wine. This is really pretty. It's really nice and simple, but it's tasty, but really tasty. On the palate, I get a lot of the similar notes that I got on the nose. There's a lot of peach, a lot of sort of nectarine-y notes to it, a lot of citrus. Green apple is right up front, very snappy. The other thing I really like about this wine, and is kind of a telltale on quality sparkling wine is the bubbles, right? So when you get really cheap sparkling wine, the bubbles are big. They're almost like soda bubbles. They're really, and it's really not pleasing in texture. These bubbles are really tiny, and they're really like silky. They have a really nice soft texture. It just makes the drinking experience so much better. What I recommend doing with a wine like this, first of all, it's great just to drink on its own. I'm really enjoying the subtleness of it. But, you know, when you're talking about making champagne cocktails, you're making mimosas, you're making Bellinis, or maybe a Kia Royale or something like that, it's a great option because it's got the right amount of bubbles. It's not strong flavored. It's not sweet. It's definitely on the dry side. And the price point is really affordable. I never recommend using champagne to make mimosas. That sounds fun, but like, why spend $60 on a bottle of wine that you're just going to dump orange juice into? It's kind of silly. So I always recommend Prosecco for that. I would also recommend Prosecco with, and any sparkling wine with some of our softer cheeses, our triple cream bries, our double cream brie, things that are really fatty and rich that need that bubbly texture to kind of clean the palate right off. That's always a great pairing. So that's the Cafferlan Prosecco. It's an extra dry, which is very important. You know, you don't want something too sweet. Really delicious sparkling wine. We have it all the time in the store, and you can get it just about any day you walk in. That's a really fun little bottle. We'll go to a cheese here to kind of break it up a little bit. Always nice to have a little cheese in between your wines when you're doing a tasting, so you can cleanse your palate a little bit. I think since we have an Italian wine for our first white, I think we'll do a little Italian cheese. So we'll start with the Piave. That's the long thin piece, which I've cut down here. So Piave is a wonderful table cheese, really beautiful Italian table cheese, 100% cow's milk, and there's different levels of it. So this one has, you'll be able to see a little bit of the rind on your piece. It's got a blue label. So this is a younger Piave. There's also a lighter sort of powder blue. This is a darker navy blue. There's a powder blue that's sort of medium aged, and there's a red label that's really aged. So this is a younger one. We don't see this one too often. I thought this would be kind of fun to do because we don't use it very much. So you can even, it's softer. It's much more creamy and sort of smooth feeling. Some of the more aged ones look almost like Parmesan and Gouda. They have a craggly, sort of cracked interior sometimes with a lot of crystallization. So tasting cheese is very much like tasting wine. You want to try to involve almost all your senses. Probably not hearing, but unless you want to listen to cheese. But you want to you look at the cheese to see if it has any. I can see some little white dots on this cheese, which is indicative of aging. So this is going to have a little bit of crystallization, but not much. But that's the proteins in the cheese. As it ages, they crystallize and gives a little crunchy texture. This one won't have a ton of that, but the cheddar will when we get to that. So you take a little bite. You want it to kind of get all around your taste buds. For me, the first thing I taste in this is salt, which I like. It's got a great salty note to it. Has a very sharp taste to my palate. It's kind of spicy. Very nutty, almost like a almondy, kind of like a toasted almond, almost like a Marcona, like a Spanish almond with that sort of oily texture. Do one more bite. Yeah. The flavor profile on all the Piave levels is very similar to Parmesan in that way, but it's a better cheese for snacking on because it's not as dry as Parmigiano. So you don't have to it's not about grating, it's really about eating. You could, in some of the more aged aspects of this cheese, use it for grating and cooking. You could certainly do that. This one, I think, would be a great melting cheese. If you cut it thin, it would be nice on top of, finish a pasta with or a lasagna or something like that. Really excellent. Kind of an interesting thing about cheese, and we talk about pairing wine and cheese. Generally, there's almost very few cheeses that I think pair well with red wine as a rule. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but red wine is very difficult to pair with cheese because cheese is so fatty and so rich that red wine doesn't have the acidity generally to cut through that. And sometimes they're just too dense, and I like something lighter and sort of brighter with my cheese. However, Piave is a cheese that I think goes great with red wine because it's not as soft and fatty. It's got a little more of a sharpness to it. It's got a little more nuttiness, and it's firmer and not as it's not as sort of buttery. So we're going to go to our second wine here, and this is the Obsession White. Really fun wine. This is brand new to us. I'm going to rinse my glass just a little bit, just so I can get the full flavor of this wine. Kind of a fun wine here. So this is actually made with a grape that I had never heard of until we sampled this wine for the first time. So it's actually made with a grape called Symphony, and Symphony was a hybrid that was developed at UC Santa Barbara in the 50s, and it's a hybrid of Grenache Blanc and Vermentino. So Grenache Blanc's mainly grown in France, Vermentino mainly grown in Italy, but they can grow some here in the United States. And they created this wine called Symphony. It's very, very rare. I do not see Symphony in anything, and I see lots of wine. And I've been working here for almost 20 years, and I've seen just about every wine there is. I've seen it, and I haven't seen this before. It's an off-dry wine, so this has a slight sweetness to it. I mean, right off the bat, the nose is so expressive. It's got a ton of sort of candied citrus, honey, and really sweet tropical fruit notes, which is like, sometimes I'm not into too much sweet, but I really liked this one. It's very pleasant. Now I'm going to really open this up because I think this has got a ton of aroma to it. It's kind of similar profile to the Prosecco in some ways because it has a lot of floral, perfumey notes to it. Maybe even more than floral, that like potpourri style perfume in a good way. It also has a lot of peach and a lot of that almost like the peaches you get in a can with the syrup on them. Again, in a good way. That sounds like a bad descriptor, but that really nice sweet peach note. And a lot of nice honey. Let's try this. Let's give this a sip. Now, I anticipate this wine will be a bit polarizing because being a little sweeter can be, people aren't always ready for that. And people oftentimes tell me that they don't like sweet wine and they don't want anything sweet. And I get it. But if you're tasting this wine and you're not into it at first, I want you to think about some ways you could use this and some ways that this could fit into your wine cabinet. I think this would be tremendous with spicy foods, particularly in the Asian cuisines. Indian, Thai, even Chinese food, like your average Chinese food, would be great because a little sweetness with a little spice works great. I'd have this with cheese, appetizers, sort of lighter fare. I think would be awesome. And if you really wanted to play around with it, if you had some kind of a fruit dessert, almost like something like a fruit cocktail, or even like a strawberry shortcake would be kind of fun. And it's sweet, but I don't think it's overly sweet. It's a fairly low alcohol wine. It's 12% alcohol, which is, in the wine world, pretty low on the lower side. So very drinkable style. And I think overall, a really unique and fun wine to drink. And it's also priced pretty nicely. So if you're looking for something sweeter, I think also, right as I'm drinking this, I'm thinking in a couple of weeks we got Easter. And Easter brings kind of the same challenges that Thanksgiving can bring for wine pairings. Lots of different things on the table, a lot of savory things. Easter usually is about ham, or in my family, there's a lot of lamb dishes, and then there's those heavy sides like scalloped potatoes and mac and cheese, and a lot of pasta dishes and things that are very rich. So a lot of times we recommend doing sweeter wines for those kind of big meals because everything is so savory and rich. A little sweetness kind of wakes your palate up and makes you, it makes it a little easier to palate, to stomach everything. Everything is just so, you need some life with what you're having. So this might be a nice thing for Easter too, or going even down the line to Thanksgiving next fall would be also a fun pairing with that too. So let's talk about our cheese. So actually, just briefly, these crackers. This is Rustic Bakery crackers. Rustic Bakery is a great brand. We carry their stuff pretty much year round in our stores. All different kinds of flatbread crackers. We've had cookies from them. We've even had fruit cakes from them in the past. So they have a great brand, and these are their everything flavored. So I personally usually have been a plain cracker guy. I don't like a lot of flavored crackers, but lately I've been trying to branch out a little bit and help and work on my cheese pairings with flavored crackers, and I really enjoy these everything spice flavor, just the same flavors of an everything bagel: garlic, poppy seeds, sea salt, onion powder. They're flavorful enough, but not so much that they're going to overpower the cheese, which I really appreciate. And a great palate cleanser, as always. Now, let's talk about our next cheese. My favorite cheese, the number one cheese of all cheeses here at the Vindman. This is the Prairie Breeze Cheddar. Okay, this has been our number one selling cheese for, I would say, looking at probably around 7 or 8 years now. Before that, it was the Prima Donna Gouda, but this has taken over for sure. This is one of those products in the store. We don't have many of them because we like to change our stuff up a lot. But it's one of those products that we can't be out of. And when we are out of it, we have to get more the next day, or there could be riots in the streets, and it could just be an ugly scene all around. So Prairie Breeze is made by Milton Creamery, which is out of Iowa. They're a, pretty successful big farm, but they're still sourcing all their milk from dairies within a 20-mile radius of their facility, and they source all their milk from Mennonite farms down in Iowa. They're very particular what they use. They really are. They're trying to find only the best cows and herds to source from, and it leads to the best tasting cheese, the best cheese on the planet. I recommend this to people all the time, and they go, "Oh, cheddar. I don't know. I came to a cheese shop. I don't want cheddar." I'm like, no. You're gonna try this cheddar. So when we look at this, I see a ton of that crystallization. You can see all those white specks. You can see if you have, on the outside of the cheese is like these little, you can see that crystallization, all the white sort of streaks on the outside. So people think that's mold. It's not mold. That's from the aging process. It's got this really nice crumb to it where it sort of breaks apart into these little craggly pieces, which I just love. It's really nice. When you smell it, it's very sweet on the nose. There's a little caramel. And then you taste it. It has this amazing combination of sweet and savory. Like no other cheese, almost like no other cheddar I've ever tasted. To me, this is the best cheddar in America, no question about it. I love the sharpness. I love the nuttiness. There's tons of salty notes in there. It's very hearty, but at the same time, it's creamy as you eat it too. It's got this. It's just, I don't know how they balance this texture out, but it's really exceptional. I think this is the perfect cheese for snacking on. It's a cheese that I bring home probably the most, and like I'm always trying to say, Aaron, you got to bring home something different, and then I just grab a hunk of this 9 times out of 10. I can't stop myself. It's really delicious. You can't stop eating it once you start, and I have customers who buy it by the pound. I've got a couple that comes into our Hopkins store every holiday season. They buy 5-pound blocks of it to bring back home with them because they can't get it where they're from. It's just taken on a life of its own, and I really think you guys will love it. And it segues great as we talk about wine and cheese pairings and cheeses to pair with red wine. This is another one that, it's difficult to pair, but it's just dense enough and just not fatty and not too much on the fatty side to pair with a red wine. And we're going to go for our red of the night and our last wine for this tasting, and that's the PJ Montepulciano di Abruzzo. All right, so That's the name of the grape, Montepulciano. Okay, Abruzzo is where it's from in Italy. This is a wine that has been on the Vinbin shelves for quite some time over the years. When I first started working here many years ago, the Boston Globe used to do an article called the Plonkapalooza. Plonk is sort of a wine term for sort of a bad jug wine. So they were sort of tongue-in-cheek on the Plonkapalooza, and it was the best wines on the market for under $15. And I distinctly remember one of the first years I worked here, this wine was the number one wine on the list. And that was sort of back in the day of when newspapers were really important and people would read the newspaper all the time. And the day that list came out, we had customers coming in every 5 minutes with the folded up newspaper saying, do you have this wine? Do you sell this wine? And we had some bottles and we sold out in a minute, and we had to try to get more. And for the longest time you couldn't get it. And it was this whole thing because it became kind of life of its own. And like all things here at the Vinbin, we rotate through wines all the time, and we find something new, and we're very, we can't focus on anything, Rick and I, when we're buying wine. So we're like, oh, we like this. There's a shiny new toy over here, and then someone brings, one of the old wine reps brings this wine and says, hey, have you guys tried this recently? We go, no, this wine is still good, and we try it, and it's always good. It just rocks our socks every time. I'm gonna rinse my glass a little bit. So these guys at this producer, and again, I'm not even gonna try to say the name, but this PJ Montepulciano, this family's been producing wine since 1791. They have records going back to 1791, and they first started really producing for business in the 1800s, in the mid 1800s. But 1791 is where their records go back to. So when we talk about this with wine a lot, especially European wine. I mean, that's even kind of young when it comes to Italian wines. We have Italian producers on the shelf that can date their records back to the 1200s, and it's just out of control. And it's amazing to think that they've been making wine in these properties for so long. But this is their black label, they call it. They do have a white label that's out there, but the black label is the tip top one. This is a really nice, beautiful, dark red wine. The nose is this unbelievably expressive nose of a fresh leather jacket with a vanilla, almost like toasty barrel on top of it. It's a really deep nose. When you give it a nice swirl, I got wine in my head. So once I give it a nice, really rough swirl, I get more of the fruit. I can smell that black cherry, almost like a cherry pie. I can smell a little plum. I can smell a little spiciness to it. Let's give it a taste. I'm looking forward to drinking this. It's not common. It's not common to find wine at this price point, which is right around that $15 price point, to have this much layer of flavor. And it's interesting that I'm doing this wine now, because just about an hour ago I was working in the Hopkins store, and I had a woman who's a regular customer, and she goes, you gave me a wine last week. I was looking for something else. You gave me this wine, and I want to say it had an ugly label, like an old label, and it was so good. And this is the wine she was talking about, the PJ Montepulciano. Because it's kind of an oldish label, the kind of wine you might see in your grandparents' house when you were a kid. But you just don't see this kind of layers. I mean, it starts off with that earthy barnyard note. It layers into this vanilla and sort of spiciness to it, this baking spice note, and there's tons of cherry and cola and this mocha sort of chocolatey thing. It's really a wild experience. It's a really cool wine to drink. The mouth feels very velvety. It's a very smooth texture. This is a great gateway into sort of old world wine, when you get some of that really mature fruit and that earthy component, almost like that. I mean, it smells and has a little bit of notes in the palate of a farm, when that we like to say poopy sort of style, but that really barnyardy note, which is one of my favorite aspects of wine, but can be kind of overwhelming when you get some really exceptionally barnyardy style. So this is a good little entry level into what an old world wine can be like. It's a great bottle. I would recommend having this with your pizza night. The price point is right there for that. But absolutely, with Easter coming up, if you do, I know a lot of our Italian friends out there are big on lasagnas or manicotti or all kinds of different pasta dishes. You can do this with just about anything. Be great with sausage and peppers. Any kind of red meat would also work. But it's also drinkable enough that you can have it with cheese and crackers and it'd be perfectly fine. It's got just enough light texture to it. It's just enough acidity as well. It's really balanced and can kind of carry you from appetizers all throughout the rest of your meal. Well, we tried 3 wines tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you found some wines you like. I hope you come see me and my wonderful staff here at the Vin Bin for lunch throughout the week. Come in and grab a bottle of wine at night, nice hunk of cheese, and keep supporting us, and we'll keep supporting you. And I hope everyone enjoyed this, and happy drinking, and happy Easter if we don't see you by then. Thank you very much.